You're not crazy, and you're not lazy. And no, constant cravings, exhausting workouts, and hating the mirror is not your forever, especially not after 40, no matter what they've told you. Body freedom is stable energy, balanced hormones, eating carbs without fear of gaining weight, and feeling great naked. And that's exactly where this podcast is taking you. Welcome to the Body Freedom Podcast, where we dig into all things women's health and give you the real actionable tools to claim body freedom for yourself. Follow the show and leave a 5-star rating. It's how more women find us. Welcome back to the Body Freedom Podcast. My name is Michele Scarlet, and today joining me is Dr. Doug Lucas, truth seeker, researcher, educator, and today we're talking all about metabolic health and wherever the conversation wants to take us. Welcome to the show, Doug.
Happy to be here. Thanks, Michele.
We have had many conversations over the last couple of months, and I think I'm most excited about this one. Let's let everybody know sort of what your background is, because I know we're going to dive into it a little bit. So tell us your story and how it brought you into the functional health space.
Sure. So I'm an orthopedic surgeon by training, and that is clearly not functional health in any way whatsoever. But my story goes back before that. As a kid, I was very overweight, struggled to understand like what was happening to my body, some pretty crummy genetics that helped or didn't help, that held some of my family members in difficult places. So I always had a kind of a curiosity around health and really more about like not being healthy. Had some really weird eating behavior things growing up, call them disorders, whatever. And when I got into the medical space, I was very interested in understanding nutrition, understanding like the biochemistry of like what goes into our body. I was really unimpressed with what we learned in medical school about the things that I was actually interested in. Obviously, like any medical school, heavy in pharmaceuticals and obviously surgery as an orthopedic surgeon. But I continued to be very curious and continued to study the things that interested me. And simultaneously, my wife went down the nutrition pathway and got her PhD in nutrition and is a registered dietitian. So continued to talk a lot about nutrition. And then once in practice, realized, man, I'm kind of in the wrong place. You know, loved surgery, fought really hard to get there to be able to do what we did, loved being in the operating room. But ultimately in my patients, most of them were at a point in their lives where they were really sick. There wasn't a lot I could do to make them much better. I could make them different. I could fix the immediate problem. But really the work that needed to be done years or decades earlier. They really were just, I hate the word victim, but they were kind of victims of bad advice, whether it be their own or somebody else's. And so I made a really difficult decision about 7 years ago to step away from the conventional medical model, go down sort of a, functional, integrative, anti-aging longevity pathway, did a fellowship with A4M, started an integrative practice that was virtual towards the beginning of the pandemic, and sort of launched myself into this space of preventing disease, and then ultimately kind of landed on osteoporosis as my niche, but still very interested in a broad spectrum of things.
Thank you for sharing your story. Was there a moment that you remember, I'm done, I'm not doing this anymore?
Yeah, I share this one often, so I apologize to your listeners if you've heard me share this before, but there was a case, this was after I started practice in Colorado, in Durango, great little town. We moved to Asheville, North Carolina for lots of reasons, and I joined a practice there where I took a lot of call. So call as a surgeon means, if you go to the ER and they need a surgeon, they call you, right? So you're on call. I was on call at the biggest hospital in this area. And there was a guy that had come in, I think he was early 30s, really sick. He was diabetic. He had an ulcer on his foot, which is really common in diabetics. And it had gotten infected and the infection had spread to his bloodstream. So he was what we would call septic. That's a really bad thing. And so ultimately, he was really sick and he was going to die. As a surgeon, they called me because that leg needed to come off. There was no saving this with antibiotics. So we had to take him to the operating room in the middle of the night. Never a good time to be in the operating room, to be honest. And in the middle of the night, especially in a hospital like the one that I was at, which I'm not going to name, but this hospital struggled with retention. So we had a lot of traveling staff. So a lot of people who weren't really familiar with the hospital, where anything is. I don't even know where the OR is. Where's the equipment? We have no idea. And we were understaffed. So we go in to do this case, not with really enough people who weren't familiar with the environment. And it was an absolute shit show. Can I say that on your podcast?
Yeah, you can say that.
Yeah. So it was just a shit show, and it was a scary environment. And I remember trying to get this patient on the table, and he was morbidly obese. super nice guy. I ended up getting to know him pretty well, but at the time, this guy was morbidly obese. I didn't have any help. I was literally kind of wrangling, with his thighs over my shoulders, trying to wrangle him onto the table because operating room tables are really narrow, trying to get the tourniquet on his thigh because we have to do that to remove the leg. And, the dude almost falls off the table, probably would have either injured me or killed me in the process. And I remember kind of pausing. It's like 3 a.m, super tired, nobody here to help out. I'm like, what the hell am I doing? Like, this is stupid. So fortunately, we were able to get the case done, got the leg off, saved his life that night, at least. And I got to talking with him afterwards, and this really secured it for me, which is super nice guy, super diligent with his diet, with his medications, doing exactly what his doctors were telling him to do, and getting fatter, sicker, and worse. And it's a great lead into metabolic health because he was doing exactly what his dietitian was telling him to do, what his doctors were telling him to do, and he was doing nothing but getting worse and worse and worse. He's probably dead. We had those conversations immediately after surgery, and then I never saw him again. But it just sunk in right then that he was actually doing it all, and the system was failing him. And so that was really the moment where I was like, I'm out of here. I can do so much more on the outside of the system than I can at 3 a.m. cutting somebody's leg off. This is not where I'm supposed to be.
How is it possible that a doctor and a registered dietitian, even together, can't come up with a nutrition plan for a type 2 diabetic that doesn't make him worse? Like, how is
it's not the lack of the plan, right? Well, and this is really interesting, actually, even in this right now in the stage of AI, right? So if you ask AI, and I haven't done this, so actually I probably shouldn't say it for sure, but I would imagine that if you asked AI what this person should have done, it would probably tell you exactly what he did. And this is the challenge with healthcare and AI. And this is true. I do this a lot in the hormone space. If you ask AI a question, it's going to assimilate all of the information that's available on the internet. And if you look at what's out there for, especially overweight diabetics, what is the recommendation? It is to eat a certain amount of carbohydrates so that you can tolerate your medications and you can find this magic balance somewhere between the drugs and the food, both of which are killing you, versus the alternative, which would be to say, you have metabolic dysfunction, you are carbohydrate intolerant. Let's remove the carbohydrates. Let's reduce your calories so that you can lose weight, restore your metabolic flexibility, and restore your metabolic health. And then you don't need the drugs. And that's what I saw in my wife's practice and what she was doing. And I was taught that that's not possible. And I remember these cases of people who are reversing, diabetes, hypertension, like all of this stuff. And now I'm talking about reversing osteoporosis. It's all possible as long as there is an underlying trigger. And for so many of these patients, there are.
Well, the underlying trigger ultimately is the metabolic dysfunction, right? There is something else going on.
Or even a step before that. Because I think it's possible to have metabolic dysfunction that you can't explain. And the same thing I say that some cases of osteoporosis are not reversible or not preventable because sometimes the body just does weird shit. You're like, I don't know why it's doing it. But that's not true for the vast majority of patients, right? The vast majority of patients who are diabetic, it's carbohydrate intolerance. And it doesn't even mean that they're overeating or they're eating poorly. They're just eating a diet that's not right for their body, right? And then it leads down a very steep downward spiral pathway that can be difficult to get out of.
Interesting. Do you feel the same way about cancer, that the body sometimes just does weird things? Or do you feel that cancer is preventable?
I wouldn't say that all cancer is preventable. I think that cancer occurs in a messy environment, right? Our body's really good at catching cancer. When you get into the, looking at what actually happens at the DNA level for cancer to occur. It's wild in 2 ways. It's kind of wild that it doesn't happen all the time, right? It's the amount of, replication and, the potential mistakes that could be made as our cells are reproducing. The fact that it doesn't throw an error all the time I can't even fathom it. But on the other side too, the body is so good at catching this problem, assuming you don't have some, rare genetic predisposition to cancer, but the body's really good at catching it. So it actually shouldn't happen very often. And when it does happen, it is because there's something wrong with the system. And that is, again, you mentioned metabolic dysfunction. So when your insulin levels are high, cortisol levels are high, when your immune system is dysfunctional, when you have, chronic stress from whatever, gut, whatever stressor you want to talk about, poor sleep, all of these things start to build up. And that's the environment that cancer is more likely to be identified in. So I think cancer is absolutely preventable on a big scale. Now, are you going to prevent every case of cancer? No, because there's lots of stuff that we can't, like they're the factors that we can't control, but there's so many factors that we can that cancer is sensitive to.
Interesting. I have read that any diagnosis, not just cancer, but any diagnosis of any disease starts 10, 15 years before you get that diagnosis. Would you agree with that?
I think chronic disease, yeah, you'd have to like look at each one independently, right? But if you talk about the big players, like what are the top 5 things that kill people? So you've got heart disease. Clearly that one starts, years, if not decades before, right? You've got dementia. That one starts definitely decades beforehand. Osteoporosis, my favorite, right? Clearly that one, assuming you had good bone density at one point in your life, that one starts decades before. The others, you start getting into like pulmonary disease, you're like, well, like, I don't know what caused that. Probably a long-term thing. But yeah, chronic disease in general, kidney disease, like these are the things that are killing most of us now. And honestly, I mean, even cancer, right? Like what leads up to it is a long time in coming, usually. So yeah, I think most of it is decades in the making.
So there's a stat, 9 out of 10 people in the US are metabolically dysfunctional. So that could mean a lot of things, right? That could mean that they're hypothyroid. That could mean that they have gut dysbiosis. That could mean like there's a lot. It's not that everybody is just so unwell that they're not functioning at all, but they're not functioning optimally. That's only 12% of Americans that are well.
Yeah, I think that paper, it's been a minute since I looked at it, but that paper actually was talking very specifically about like glucose metabolism, metabolic health. And I remember looking at it because I actually didn't meet their criteria of being metabolically well either. And I sort of was like offended by that. But I was like, hey, but my genetics are crummy around metabolic health. And so like they're talking in that paper about like A1C, glucose. I think they'd used waist circumference, maybe blood pressure. I don't remember what the other metrics were, but basically like your metabolic dysfunction, syndrome X was what it used to be called. Like those criteria, how many Americans actually meet all of them to be quote unquote metabolically well? Yeah. And it was 12%. I'm not surprised, having been in the conventional medical model where we collect these data points, right? Like we collect, I know people's weight and waist circumference, and we look at glucose and A1C and yeah, I mean, it's rare to find somebody who's metabolically well. And here's the other thing is too, like just because they're in that 12% doesn't mean they're healthy either. Right. Like you look at a lot of frail, like because my population of osteoporosis patients, right? Look at a lot of frail, older women. They're going to meet the definition of metabolically healthy, but they're not healthy. So here's the scarier statistic, which I don't actually have the number, but how many people would you consider to actually be healthy? Like they meet every criteria of health, body composition, strength, like what percentage of the American population? And it's got to be it's clearly single digits.
It's got to be, which, you know what? I'm also offended by that. And I like that you're offended that you didn't meet the criteria. I'm sure you know by now after, a number of conversations with me, maybe I am a bit of a perfectionist or I'm always striving for more, but like, that's unacceptable to me. I don't know what it is about me and my drive, but I never want to say that I'm metabolically unwell. To me, and there's so many people who are like, oh, okay, well, if like 90% of the population is unwell, then then it's fine, right? They're comparing themselves to other unwell people. I'm like, hell no, I'm going to be the top 5%.
So here's can I ask you a fun twist on this? Not to interview you on your own show. This is what an interviewer does. So here's a question. So I'll just use me as an example. And this is a GLP-1 question. I would not have met criteria according to this study until recently for metabolic health. I couldn't get there without a low dose of a GLP-1 drug.
So then is the standard
too high?
Attainable?
I mean, again, my genetics are crummy. My A1C is high, even if I eat literally a zero carbohydrate diet. So there's a component there that's just not controllable for me. On a GLP-1 drug, though, my A1C is normal. It's great. It's like 5.2. So yeah, it's really interesting. And my diet's not substantially different. I'm eating a low enough dose that doesn't change what I eat, but the effect of that diet on my body is different. It actually throws into for me, it sort of throws this big question of what are the expectations? What does our environment do to certain people, especially with the genetic makeup like mine? Should we be looking more at the genetics of this and having different expectations based off of your genetic makeup? I mean, my family is all, for the most part, obese, terrible glucose markers, early heart attacks,
Same.
Could be worse, but it's not great. And I wasn't able to, even with a very, I'm obviously a perfectionist, high performer, even with a very, almost obsessive style diet, could not keep those biomarkers controlled.
Interesting. So then the question becomes, is the marker attainable anyway? And so do we not have the right stats?
Or maybe they're not the right markers for everyone, right? And we know Like use BMI, for example, right? Like according to BMI, I am overweight. Now, am I overweight because I'm out of shape? No. Like if you look at body composition, it's right where I want it to be. My BMI is high because I'm dense, like I'm muscular, and that's not a bad thing, right? Like, I don't know, do you talk about your family on this? We've talked about your...
We can talk about my family on this. Nobody listens. No, my family doesn't listen to this.
Great. So your husband, he's a firefighter. I assume he's pretty fit, right? Do you know what his BMI is?
I actually don't know right now what his BMI is, but years ago, when we first met, he worked for me at my personal training studio, and we both had BMIs that were higher than average because we trained all the time.
Yeah.
Right. So muscle mass, density, et cetera, changed that. And even on my life insurance.
Right. You got dinged for it.
I did. I was like, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. So, and I bring it up just to say, like, sometimes these biomarkers aren't logical. And, A1C is an interesting one where, like, I could not, even on a ketogenic diet, my A1C was still high, right? I mean, it's like, I can't do anything about that. My glucose was still high. Now, arguably that was because of cortisol and stress. So that is better when I'm on a GLP-1 drug, but B, if I don't do as many things as I am doing, my glucose drops. So like, you could argue that's not metabolic health, but really it is, right? It is still metabolic unhealth because I'm doing something else to influence that biomarker.
So if your cortisol wasn't dysregulated, potentially we would see a better A1C. However, would we also see a less happy Doug?
I don't know.
I say that with intention because I forget who I was talking to the other day. You and I are very similar in this regard. And when I was in my 20s and I was building my first business and I was like 7 days a week all in, I did nothing else. It just was like head down, do the work. That was part of the decline in my metabolic health when I finally started to address it in my 30s. And when I realized that was part of the picture, I actually really resented my own drive, my own ambition, my own, get up and go kind of DNA is what I would describe it as. And now I realize how much it serves me. And I don't want that piece to disappear, right? I don't want to let go of that. That's part of me. It's fun. It's challenging. It brings spark to a different part of my life that's just mine.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. And the reason why I laughed is I was literally looking this morning at some work that I was doing with a coach on drivers. This concept of like, what are my internal or intrinsic drivers? And mine are conflicting, right? Because I am, again, high performer. I love to succeed. I don't really understand what failure means. Like, it's not an option. At the same time, I also crave simplicity and I crave calm. And I think that's the flip side of me, right? This almost like, I don't know which one's the shadow, which one's the light, but they are conflicting. And I have an internal driver that does want to actually lead. We talked before we hit record about like being role models for kids. Like, I want to actually show what the other side looks like too. Because my wife is also high performing entrepreneur. One of my kids is very sensitive to stress and just like environmental stress. And when she and I are both, kind of overwhelmed, like he has a tic disorder and he like has uncontrollable tics just because of the feeling of stress in our household.
Interesting.
Right? Like it's very, very powerful energy. And so I want to find that and really support that internal driver for me, which is maybe the opposite of that drive to be a guide, to be a researcher, to be an educator, to be the way that my coach put it, we couldn't find a better word. It was exposing the bullshit, right? Like I just really enjoy identifying these areas. And this is why I talk so much about women's hormones and osteoporosis. These are areas where there's just so much bullshit, and exposing that and just bringing it out and showing it for what it is. But at the same time, also being able to take a step back and to find what we call it in my intrinsic driver is making space for myself. And she actually called me on some of my own language because I was saying like, right now I'm failing at making space for myself. I'm literally working as I'm working out. I'm shortening this time for myself. I'm, fortunately sleep right now is okay. But she pointed something out to me. She said, how much of your day do you spend on yourself? And I was like, well, I'm like, none. Like, I'm not getting any time to myself. I don't have space for myself in my house, kind of like in this spiral. And she pointed out, she was like, well, how much time do you sleep? Like, you're very dedicated to your sleep. Yeah, that's 8 hours. No question. Like, how much time do you spend working out, even though it's shortened? I was like, well, it's an hour, And so how much time do you spend eating, preparing meals? And so we came to this number where 42% of my day is about me. Like, wow, that's actually like a really big number, you know? Yeah. So anyway, intrinsic drivers. Would I be happy if I weren't doing the other things? No. Do I have to do them how I'm doing them now though? No. So it's both.
Do you find that you're always like, you want to be building, you want to be this driver, you're ambitious, and then you're like, okay, now I'm in it. And I'm like, oh shit, I built it with giving myself a lot of extra work. And now I'm stressed out about it. And now I'm working while I'm working out. And now I'm listening to audiobooks about the thing I want to do while I'm cooking. It's taken up all my time. How do I do this thing? And like, are you just now trying to add another piece to that puzzle? Go, okay, I still want to do this thing, but I also still want to be the calm every time you add another piece.
So I think this is the magic. I definitely have days where we were talking about attachment styles earlier, where I just want to say, I'm done. I'm walking away. I was actually joking in our Osteo Collective town hall on Wednesday. I was in Costa Rica last week, and our host, Ashley Williams, she's our dietitian. She was like, so could you move to Costa Rica? And I was like, oh, totally. Like I'd totally move to Costa Rica. She said, well, so that's where we'll find you. And I was like, oh, no, you would never find me.
If I'm going, I'm gone.
Be gone. Gone. And I definitely have those days where I'm like, I'm just gone. But no, I wouldn't be happy that way. I think what I've learned, especially over the last couple of months, my wife and I both have been going through this course with this company called The Unusual Business. I'm happy to give them a shout out because it's totally changing the way that we look at the way we build teams. But The Unusual Business, Colin Faulkner is the lead, the founder's name. And it's basically like a company that helps small companies and entrepreneurs like me and us to incorporate AI into our business. And it's one of the exercises was really to work with Claude and to feed it this like specific script where it asks you questions, and really the work is for Claude to understand you. But the output was so telling as to the direction that we need to go. Because what came up over and over again, we were just such clear patterns. And so the thing that it pointed out to us is that what we need really is a better pursuit of the right team. We have an incredible team, so I'm not saying we have the wrong team. But if we're going to add another layer, because we have another layer we want to add. If we're going to add another layer, it's not by working harder. It's not by working more. It is by having a better team. And when I look at my mentors, the people that are really, and we see this all the time, right? The people that seem to have like 15 businesses, they have such incredible influence and impact. And like, how is this possible? You look at them on Instagram, you're like, there's no way you can actually have time off and do all the things that you're doing. It's team. You get to know some of these people and like their team is incredible. So that's the thing is like, as a visionary, as someone with mission who is driven by impact, it's about finding the right people to help to deliver they're bought into that. I have some amazing team members, but if we're going to add another layer, we need another layer.
Yeah. Not you doing all of the work all of the time. You're not sinking into
Right.
it and then losing yourself in it.
Right. Because I'm already there, right? Like I dedicated to not having my computer in front of me while I'm working out. But the problem is my gym is right next to my office. So I'm like, just walk into my office and I'll, do a couple of things. I'll send Claude on another search and then I'll go back and do another set.
I'm big on the voice notes with Claude. Just grab my phone and do it. I'm the same. So let's come back to your A1C. Perfect nutrition still can't get that A1C down without a GLP-1. So it's very clear that nutrition is so bio-individual, right? Based on genetics, based on lifestyle, based on all kinds of things. Where would somebody even begin? Because not everybody has access to peptides. Not everybody even has access to get the blood work and for them to understand it the way you and I understand blood work. So where should somebody start if everything is so bio-individual and, Michelle's eating chicken breast, but I like chicken thighs. Where does somebody start to get healthy?
Yeah. Do you like chicken breast?
No, I actually don't like chicken breast.
I just
it's so dry and gross.
It's the second worst meat source behind turkey.
Oh, I hate turkey also.
Terrible, right? Oh my goodness. Okay. Where to start? I'd say start listening to your body. That's the biggest thing because there's no influencer that's just like you. There's no book that's written about you. We all are. The individuality, the bio-individualness. I don't know what that word is. Whatever that word is. You know what I'm trying to say? Mm-hmm. The extent of individuality is unfathomable. Like everybody's different. All of our genetic makeup is different. The environmental exposures that we've had, everything around us, everything's different. So you have to listen to you. And when I talk about food, there's some really basic things that you can say that are right for all humans. And I'm not going to say like vegan carnivore. No, like the things that are right for humans is eating adequate calories, adequate protein, adequate micronutrients through whole foods, right? Like it just like however you want to put a belief system around it, that's what you need to focus on. And then dialing it into you. Like I know that there's things that I do not feel good if I eat. I'm not a big, I don't like to talk about anti-nutrients in vegetables, like they're the worst thing in the world. But I do not feel good if I eat kale and spinach that are raw. I can eat them cooked, but I can't eat them raw. Whereas, like my wife, she's like, no, this feel great when I eat raw spinach. I'm like, awesome. Good for you. Don't put it in my salad. So you just really have to listen to yourself. And that takes, though, a level of trust in your own body that most people don't have, right? We have removed ourselves from thinking and being in touch and in tune with our bodies. That takes a long time to get back. And I'm probably barely there. I'm just scratching the surface of that for myself. But I find that those that I work with who are really in tune with their bodies, they know. They don't have to ask questions. And we can get labs and we can prove some things through functional testing or serum testing or whatever. But really the easiest and cheapest place is to pay attention to how you feel.
It's interesting because this is a piece that I see most of the women I work with struggle with the most is trusting themselves. They give away their power to even me as their coach. Just tell me what to eat. And I'm like, okay, but me telling you what to eat isn't you learning how to eat well and fuel your body. I could tell you what I do. And again, to your point, you're probably just scratching the surface. Every year that you get older, every new challenge in life brings new things to even us. But I did notice you have an Oura ring on your hand or on your finger. And so I find that women want to outsource to data all the time. And I have a Fitbit on my wrist. I'm looking at my sleep scores. I'm looking at my HRV every single day. What can I do? I don't know if it's the challenge of it or if we are actually looking for some kind of output to then tell us what to input. But I do find that women, this is probably the hardest part, is to actually trust themselves. And then the interesting twist here is when we start to get them metabolically healthy, trust comes back. Because, I see a lot of women who are constipated. I see a lot of women who have a lot of digestive issues and they don't realize how much rent that's taking up inside of their head every day, all day. The anxiety, what am I going to wear? What am I going to feel like? Can I find food that isn't going to cause me to feel so bloated at the end of the day, at a party. And when they don't feel that anymore, all of a sudden that chunk of energy that was wasted on all of that disappears. And they just trust that they'll find something. They'll just trust that their clothes fit. They'll just trust that they'll have a bowel movement in the morning and they don't need to concern themselves with it ananymore. Right. So it's kind of interesting that they go hand in hand.
Yeah. Boy, I mean, this is a slippery slope to talk about because trust this is a really challenging thing. And we talked about different topics. And this is one where you start getting into roles in society. I think women in modern society, they give away their trust. I mean, not intentionally, but it is almost sucked out of them very early on, right? Very early in adolescence and early adulthood. And you could say all the way from the hormone places where I spend so much of my time talking about all the way from using hormonal contraceptives early on to remove, the natural cycle ovulation because women are taught not to your period is an inconvenience. This is something that societally we don't talk about this. We don't talk about menstrual flow and blood and all this stuff. You take all this is bad and there's shame around it. And then you get the eating component of it. And I grew up in the fine art space, right? Ballet was my major in college and I was a professional dancer before I went to medical school. And so I watched both men and women, but really the women who were so impacted by the aesthetic, having to look a certain way, hating themselves because of, they couldn't be skinny enough. And then watching their mentors torture them by reinforcing the fact that they weren't skinny enough or how is it that you don't fit into this costume, Mm-hmm. And then you watch what happens to those women is that they don't trust themselves. They don't like themselves, right? They don't like their bodies. And then all of a sudden you end up in this place in society where you have to look externally because you have no internal guide. Right? It's just gone.
You're so disassociated from it.
Yeah. And that, for me as a really bad partner for some of these women, they're trying to find, how to work through relationships, trying to support women who are in this place. It was actually really difficult for me to actually learn how to help them, to guide them, to hold them as a masculine, trying to help support these women who were struggling in society. And, here I am now, 30 years later, my wife and I are celebrating our 20th anniversary. We've been together for 25 years. We're celebrating next month, our 20th
Congratulations.
year. Yeah. And so, and she grew up in this model, right? And so like this conversation of trust is really, really difficult because while having a partner that you can trust is really important, and there's certainly challenges in that, learning how to trust yourself is like this really difficult internal work. And yes, each of these pieces, like the metabolic health piece, opens a door. Understanding that you don't have control over some of these things also, I think, opens the door. This is my own personal journey right now is, what's mine and what's not mine. My wife is doing a lot of work around like the energy of like, inherited trauma, right? Like go back, start to go back generations and you realize some of this stuff is really not yours to hold. Where do these things even come from? These unfounded fears, like where does this come from? It's a really, really interesting space, but taking these little steps and saying like, I can learn to trust myself with what I'm putting in my mouth today. Start one meal at a time, right? Like I can trust that this thing feels good to me, or not, right? Like I know some people, they follow what I like eat and talk about. And they're like, okay, Doug eats eggs for breakfast every day. I'm going to do that. But then they realize they're like, actually, I don't feel good when I eat eggs because it's not right for everybody.
Sure.
And so, I'm like, great. Like, you don't have to be me. In fact, like, you probably don't want to be me. Like, feel what's good for you. And then let's move on. Okay. So it's not eggs. So what can it be? And then you find the thing that feels good. And then you just start to reinforce it. And just like it's a slippery slope to lose that trust with yourself, it is also baby steps to reinforce, like the atomic habits, right? Like the tiniest steps that you continue to do over and over and over and over again that will end up with big results.
Do you see in your practice with women who are struggling with osteoporosis, if they can't get a handle on this piece, the trusting themselves, that inner work, do you see that they progress slower in terms of getting healthy?
Yeah, I'll be honest. I have not figured out how to put this into practice with my patients. So
it's not easy.
Well, I'm not a practitioner of it, right? So I can speak about my experience and those, in my inner circle around me, but I cannot teach on it. I know people that can teach on it. And one of the things that my wife and I want to build is an area where this could happen, right? Because in her space, she's in the weight loss space. I mean, it is rampant in that space, right?
And me as well.
Yeah. And so how to identify it, address it in an appropriate way, because you could really blow somebody up if you were to point out some of these things and they would either shut you down or they would potentially have a really bad outcome. Like you have to be really, really careful when you start talking about some of these energetic things, because when you uncover it, like you can't go back. You open that door, it doesn't shut. And so I honestly have not put it into practice. I really want to, because I think it is a huge piece of what's missing for those that are not succeeding, but I don't have a responsible way to address it.
Interesting. So I've done that work. And when I was in the lowest of my low metabolically, that was a piece of it for me. I'm not saying that it's perfect. And I still, it's a practice and it's a muscle that I'm constantly flexing and building and making stronger. And it's interesting because I said out loud yesterday, it's going to suck for a minute. And then when you get there, it's really fucking good. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah, of course, doing that work, diving into some trauma, understanding yourself when you don't like yourself is going to suck so bad. I assume you've done the work. I'm not, you can.
No, for sure. I will say too, when you find a piece of yourself that you find disgusting, it's really uncomfortable.
It's really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's really, but now whatever work comes next. So whether it's surrender to that, like true acceptance, not like, well, I'm just going to accept it, with resistance, like true surrender, acceptance. This is me. I deserve to be loved. I deserve to be here. I deserve happiness. I deserve all of the things. It doesn't matter about this disgusting piece.
Yeah.
Right. You get there.
Forgiveness and grace. We are all human, right? None of us is perfect, but that doesn't give you an excuse either.
100%.
Not an excuse to be an asshole.
Right. I say that to my son. I say that to my 3-year-old. You can be angry. You can be frustrated. You can be sad. You can be all of the things, but you cannot hit me and you cannot hit your sister, whatever it is. Like all feelings are welcome. Not all behaviors are welcome is kind of my standard there. But how good does it feel to actually finally get to the other side of all this?
I don't know what the other side actually looks like. Definitely the only way through is through, right?
Why would you want to stop in hell, right?
The only way to the other side is through. I don't know what the other side looks like, but I will say that, where I am now that I've sort of accepted to doing the work, I resisted it for a long time, right? I was just like, fuck it. I'm good. Like life is good because we live in this society where you can ignore all of it, right? Like just Netflix and hang out and, eat tasty food. And this is fun. This is life in this world anyway, but that's not actually the work. And when you start doing the work, you realize like there is so much more. And I almost feel bad that I'm not bringing this forward more. I never have this discussion publicly, but this is really the work that maybe I'm even called to bring forward once I understand it better. If more people understood this, the world would be totally different.
I agree with you. I also think to your cortisol piece, when you stop resisting your own shit, you physically feel like at peace. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Right. And so if chronic stress is a piece to all chronic disease, like this, we are taught as a society over generations to ignore, to resist. It's uncomfortable. Don't deal with it. Eat pizza, drink alcohol.
Yeah.
Right. Like drown it out. And then we wonder why our whole society is so sick.
But it's a brilliant business model, though.
Trillions of dollars to keep people sick simply because they can't look at themselves in the mirror.
Right. People at peace don't spend a lot of money.
No, they don't, because they don't need a lot of things.
Right.
They don't do it. Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
I mean, go back to like the people in Costa Rica that I met. I love talking to the people that live there, especially the expats from the US, right? They're like, we moved here. Our house is a 20th of the size, right? Like all we do is like we raise food, we buy what we need, we hang out on the beach, we surf, we work remotely. Like they still work. They're like, I do, like I have a job, I make less money and I'm so much happier.
They played the game right.
It's a version.
It is a version, yes. I would love to know statistics on metabolic health in countries like Costa Rica.
Well, just look at, as bad as the Blue Zone data is, look at the Blue Zone data. And it is like, you can see that there's an impact. Now you could argue like, what is that impact from? Is it because they're all quote unquote vegan? No, because they're not. But, I made a post about this when I was down there. Like when you're living near the equator, like at 6:30 when the sun goes down, like I'm like ready for bed.
Yes.
There wasn't this trip, but 2 trips ago, we stayed in this sort of like, it was kind of like a camp. Like it was a little like not quite that rustic, but like there was nothing, there were no TVs, there's no internet. So there's nothing to do after dinner. So we would have dinner together, like a communal dinner. And then everybody went to bed and it was like 7:00 and you would sleep until the sun came up. So everybody's sleeping 12 hours a night.
That sounds like perfection to me.
What is their cortisol level like? You're like, it's so good. And like the only thing that everybody there was sort of like building a home, but they didn't have a deadline. They're all just like, we're like going to get food. And like, I heard that there's this table over in the stores. We're going to go check that out. Like who wants to ride together? Let's stop at the beach on our way and let's go, boogie boarding, right? Like that's their life.
Just no schedule, no deadline, no stress.
And what was wild is there were kids there and like they were homeschooling, but like again, like there's no schedule, there's no rush, like they'll get there.
Interesting. That's not easy to live and implement in our society. You're in the US, I'm in Canada. It's not easy to do that. And it's not easy for your personality, I imagine.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing. The thing is I could do that. And also as long as I had access to the internet, like I can research like crazy, right? I can write papers, I can do podcasts, I can do interviews. So I do think it's possible.
I like it. I'm also in the space where I want to be more of a educator. I want to be more of be the example of what metabolic health looks like for not only my family and kids, but for all of the women that I can impact around the world and just get them thinking about it a little bit more. Like you said, just like one step, one meal, tune in. Does it feel good? Yeah. Tell yourself that you're safe. Whatever that, like, why do people think that that's like silly to do?
The safety piece is huge. And this is something my wife and I have talked about because it's really funny. We built our businesses very separately, like kind of intentionally, and almost polar opposite clientele, right? Like she's dealing with people that are overweight and obese, and I'm dealing with people that are generally underweight and frail and have osteoporosis. There's actually not a lot of similarity between those two groups, except that neither one of them feel safe in their body.
Again,
the response is different. Right.
What
they're doing is different, but the underlying thing, like if you wanted to say root cause, is they don't feel safe in their body and they never have.
Do you still think that this is society conditioning? I'm going to say women, but I'm sure men feel this way as well.
Yeah, I think men are
talked about as much.
I think men are less impacted, and I actually don't, because I spend most of my time thinking about how to help my women patients. I don't spend and support my woman wife. I don't spend a lot of time thinking about it from a male perspective. I would love to, because I do think it's there. I think because I can only speak to my personal story, but when a man doesn't feel safe in his body, he cannot hold another, right? And there's the relationship dynamic, right? Women don't feel safe, and then they don't feel safe with a partner, like there's no way that relationship's going to succeed. So for a man to be able to hold his partner, and I'm not saying this in a negative way, it's the energetics of it. For a man to be able to hold his partner, he needs to be able to trust himself and be trusted by his partner. And that requires safety on both sides. But anyway, your question, what was your question? I don't even know.
We're just going in all the directions. I don't really care what my question was, but I like that explanation of energetics and safety in the body. This is what I was going to ask. Do you think that the lack of safety again stems from society conditioning women to not feel safe? It's like you said, the business model. I'm going to get a little bit like angry here in a second.
Go ahead.
Are we preyed upon as women?
Totally.
Like every industry, you could talk about like cosmetics, you could talk about weight loss, you could talk about perimenopause, you could talk about fertility, you could talk about teenage and birth control, like teenagers and birth control, like literally every stage of life for a woman is
marketing opportunity.
My God.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense because, I mean, if you look at it, if you were just to remove all like integrity, ethics, morals, even, I don't know, well, we'll just stop there. Women are the decision makers and the purse holders in families. Healthcare dollars are spent by women. Groceries are bought. Now this, again, it's not sexist. It's just statistics.
Yeah.
Groceries are bought by women. Decisions on what type of house, how big the house, like these decisions are for the most part all made by women. So yes, absolutely, women are preyed upon. I am a big fan for the menopause movement and now the perimenopause movement. But please understand, it is not for women. It is another way to prey on women. And I mean, it just like you just see it, right? That said, like women can still take advantage of it and capitalize on it and use it to their advantage. But know that like this isn't happening for women. This is happening to women, and there is opportunity in it for women.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that comes back to the trust piece. That comes back to being in tune. That comes back to trusting your instincts about what's good for me and what's not, and speaking about it and saying no when it's not right anymore, and not from an ego perspective, from a, nope, this doesn't work for me.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny. I'm starting to see some of this commentary around the menopause movement where there are some like big influencers in the menopause space who are saying like, you know what, I'm kind of like, I don't like where this is going, like this doesn't actually feel right anymore. And I think it became such a big revenue boom, right? $1 billion industry that now like it doesn't feel like this grassroots, like it's almost like what feminism was in like originally, right? And then it grew so much and it got so extreme where now like most of the women are like, whoa, actually, I don't want that.
Mm-hmm.
Like that doesn't feel good. And I think it's kind of the same thing where it's like, oh, like everything is about menopause, but it's like, well, wait, it's not. Like, yeah, it's important. And yes, we should talk about it. And definitely we should be doing research on women for good. But it's become something that's not actually even fun to listen to or talk about anymore. Even in the hormone space, like I came out really hard and vocal about the value of hormones for bone health and how we need to be looking at this differently. And I've actually almost stopped talking about hormones altogether because like the rhetoric is just so loud. And I'm basically in a virtual room full of women yelling at each other. And I'm like, I just don't want any piece of that. I'm happy to share my experience, but if you guys want to yell at each other, go ahead.
It's funny, I've had that same sort of light bulb moment where I'm like, my content sounds like everybody else's around this and I don't like it anymore. And every woman thinks that it's her estrogen and thinks that it's her testosterone, and like, cool, like there might be pieces there, but like I am more so in the realm now of like, let's just educate. Let's stop doing the 5 tips to estrogen balance because you will stay fat without it kind of noise. And every single woman that I talk to that comes into my world has no idea where to begin. No idea, because she's read it all. We have, I don't know your opinion on this. There's a doctor here in Canada.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say his name.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you have 2 anyway. But please continue.
Well, we have more than 2 here, but no,
you have 2 that could fit what you just described. But please continue.
There's a doctor here in Canada that swears up and down that glucose should never fluctuate in a body. Never. It should be streamlined all the time, no matter what you eat, day in and day out. And that is the only way to determine health. And I'm sorry, I don't know what your opinion is on this, and you can tell me in a second. Here's my opinion. Well, we have insulin for a reason. We have a whole feedback loop. We eat food, our glucose increases, our pancreas produces insulin to bring us back into homeostasis, just the same way cortisol and adrenaline and DHEA work. So why is that an acceptable feedback loop, but all of a sudden our glucose and our insulin feedback loop doesn't exist in the same realm? This is crazy. The noise around wellness is so loud.
Well, I think part of it is because in order to actually have a reel go viral, you have to say something that's absurd, like just absurd. And it's frustrating because I don't like saying absurd things, or like being so far out there that like you have to piss off enough people that like it's just a stream of negativity, but that gets you, the views that you're going for. Like, I don't like that game. But yeah, that's absurd, right? Like glucose is supposed to rise so that insulin can be secreted, so that IGF-1 can go up, so that you can be anabolic. Like, that's how it works. To say that your glucose would stay absolutely normal would mean that you have no emotions, no cortisol, no adrenaline. No, like it just doesn't make any sense.
Nothing. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I think we could do a whole episode on just wellness noise.
That'd be fun.
Well, I'll get you back on here. Dr. Doug, I have one last question for you. Have you ever ChatGPT'd or used Claude to determine your metabolic age versus your biological age?
I haven't, which I guess is not the answer you were going for.
No, that's okay. I saw this somewhere the other day and I was very curious. The stage of life that I am in, I am 8 months postpartum. I've got a young 3-year-old. I'm busy. I've got fragmented sleep. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be like 65, metabolically 65, 39 and metabolically 65. I guaranteed it. I was happy to know that I was metabolically 29.
Fantastic.
Right?
I'd love to know your prompt for that.
I will send that to you. I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but I was very clear and I was like, and then ask for clarity if you don't understand what it is that I'm asking for. And then it had like a bunch of questions.
Yeah, no, I'm sure it's because it has access to all the different calculators. Yeah. One of the things that Callan gives us access to as we're going through this course is this like super prompt generator. It is insane because it just basically like you just explain your problem and it creates this like, 15-page prompt, you are so-and-so from this and like blah, 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 blah. And just like lays it all out there so that when you put it into whatever you want it to go into, like the responses are just amazing.
I love Claude, by the way.
It's coming. Yeah, Claude. Claude's my new friend.
Mine too. Well, thank you again for being on my show today, Dr. Doug. It was a pleasure. And I really appreciate just the honest conversation and just to see where it goes.
Yeah. Thanks, Michelle.
That's a wrap on today's episode of the Body Freedom Podcast. And remember, body freedom isn't a fantasy reserved for women in their 20s. It's stable energy, balanced hormones, eating carbs without fear, and feeling great naked at 40, at 50, at any age. And every episode is walking you one step closer. Before you go, if you're not sure what's actually blocking your body freedom, take my free metabolism quiz. In just a couple of minutes, you'll find out exactly what's going on with your metabolism and what to do about it. The link is in the show notes. And if today gave you even one shift, tap follow and leave a 5-star review. It's genuinely how more women find this show and start claiming body freedom for themselves. I'll see you next week.